That's it. I like that we both have swag though. I've got the Coin Geek shirt and you've got the R7 hat on.
Oh yeah, look at that. Yeah, I got my San Francisco RT shirt and my the R7 hat. That's how we roll.
Yeah. So for people who don't know Rarity7, this is Noah at Rarity7. Noah, where's home for you?
Home is just north of San Francisco in Marin County,
Uh-huh.
and just moved out of the big city and into suburbia. And Rarity7, the organization, is a broad-based organization. We've got an East Coast and West Coast operation. I'm on the West Coast. Owen Seymour, my partner, and our lead numismatist is on the East Coast. He is in Pennsylvania, just outside of Philadelphia.
Oh, that's so cool. I had no idea that you were nationwide like that.
I mean, as far as having two people who are in two different home offices on other sides of the country, I will take the label nationwide any day of the week.
Yeah. Well, I guess
Bi-coastal.
yeah, bi-coastal indeed. Indeed. I gotta find something like in the tip of Florida or somewhere that
Or Maine. You could be north, south, complete coverage of the United
I'm
States.
just gonna
Old
find some unhoused man with an iPhone that the government pays for and say, "You're on my team now, buddy."
We'll call you Old Pueblo and Kennebunkport Coin
And
Geek.
and he'll definitely be able to just like, provide as much good Instagram content as I do. It'll be good. It'll be good. So do you have a storefront on either location or you just
Not
at
negative. By
shows?
appointment only. Offices on both coasts. My storefront is my presence at all the shows that I get to see you at and
Right.
all my friends.
Yeah. And so Rarity7, the word rarity spelled out the number seven, rarity7.com is the website, right?
Yeah, that is correct. And if I will offer one pitch, my one pitch is join our mailing list because you can go to the footer of the website. We have lots of really cool coins, and the people who are on our mailing list get the absolute first shot of the coolest of the cool.
And you also write like words and stuff.
I mean, I do my best. I'm not terribly good at it, but I do. You know the whole thing about a million monkeys banging on a million typewriters occasionally, produce something of note. Yeah, there's a million monkeys in my brain, and we kind of make it happen.
Yeah, well, I mean the humbleness there, but like honestly though, the article, I was looking at in I wanted to talk specifically about um this big find that you guys had.
Yeah.
And for those of you who don't know, I'll end up, editing in some type of picture here. But a 1851 $5 Schultz on an 1847 Mexican 8 real. And it's going to be beautiful and take up the entire screen when we get it, showing up there. But so so for those of you who don't understand, this is like a counter stamp, and it was on an original coin, and then there's a counter stamp. There's a trial of the die strikes on
Not a
top,
trial, Ben.
used, used. So I'm going to stop telling the story. Tell me the
Yeah.
story first of what the item is, and then you can tell me
Yeah.
the story of how you guys found it.
Okay. Yeah. So I have it here on my desk, thankfully, and I'm going to hold it up, and we're going to see if the
Zoom.
camera focuses. And,
Oh,
and this is
brilliant.
it. This is her. It is incredibly. It's a unique coin. The actual uh, under type is an 1847 8 real coin from the Durango Mint. I do not know my world coin, so I may be getting the DO part wrong. But I think that's what it is. And apologies if I got that wrong. And then right over the top of it is this crazy thing that looks like Lady Liberty. And it happens on the reverse also. When you look on the reverse, you can see that right there on the reverse is that counter stamp of the die impression that says pure California gold. It's a wild coin, so I'll tell you the story of it. And here it is in its glory, and we'll see if the camera can
We
refocus.
actually had a pretty good focus on both
Yeah,
sides.
there we go. That's pretty good there.
That's
Okay.
cool.
So we'll put it down. So I'll tell you the story. And by the way, you can go to our website. If you go to the news and thoughts section, we have a whole a write up there, and I appreciate it. But here's the crazy story. So first, I'll tell you what this is and how it appeared, and then I'll give you a little history of it. And interrupt me at any point, Ben,
Yeah,
and we can we
I'm good
can
at that.
discuss. You are, and it's great. So here I am sitting at a local coin show, and a guy walks up, a very nice guy, has a bunch of coins to show us, as you know, as is wont to happen at a local coin show, and pulls out, first thing he pulled out was a 1916 D Mercury dime with an added mint mark. So that was, okay, that was a womp womp. And then he had some early 90s Morgan, S Mint Morgan, in mint or low mint state, a couple $100 coin. And then he had just some, literal junk silver, a couple Buffalo nickels. And so, we were kind of talking about the Morgan dollar because those are fun little things to buy. Nothing super crazy, but something nice. And I'm kind of going back to work, and my buddy Paul is with me, Paul Lathrop, who works with us, and he continues the conversation with the guy, and he says, hey, do you have anything else? And the guy pulls this coin out and hands it to Paul and says, well, I've had this from a relative, and it was in the safe. I don't know what it is. And Paul looks at it and he says, well, that's strange. That looks like a 5 lib stamped on a Mexican 8 real. And I'm kind of, pricing up some of the other, the Morgan dollar and a couple of the other things that he has, and I'm half listening. And, when you hear something like 5 libs stamped on a 8 real, the first thing you think of is, the crazy coins you see on Alibaba and eBay, these off-center 1955 double dies, or the 1804 dollars, or all these like wild things. So that's immediately where my brain went. And then Paul flips it over, and he continues looking at the obverse, and he goes, that doesn't look like it says Liberty though. Then he flips it over, and my brain is kind of attuned to this kind of stuff. And then he says on the reverse, he says, wait a second, that doesn't say United States of America, that says Pure California. And when I hear Pure California, my brain, I immediately record skip, and I kind of looked over, because that's what's written on Pioneer Gold, all the really cool Pioneer Gold. So now I'm thinking, all right, well, this is getting a little too specific to be one of these, AliExpress or Temu type of novelty coin. So I grab a loop and I look at the obverse, and I start reading what's on her headband, and it doesn't say Liberty. Correct. It says Schultz, which is Schultz. I was expecting it to say Moffat, because that's one of the most common ones, or Kellogg. Those are the ones that you see out there. And it says Schultz. And Schultz, I'm going to take a diversion on the story now, is an incredibly specific and rare thing. And as soon as I heard that, I said, this is way beyond the purview of your, 1804 dollar or your 1955 double die from Temu. This sounds a little bit more interesting. We're going to have to take a look. Okay, so let me kind of shift gears a little bit. Why does it say Pure California Gold on the reverse? Who is Schultz? What's the whole story on that? So let's roll back time, Ben. You and I are hanging out. It's 1849. You and I have just, we met at a saloon in old Yerba Buena, San Francisco. We got on a train, and we, or a steamship, and we came out here, and we're going to seek our fortunes, and we're going to go to the hills of California and mine some gold. And you're probably way ahead of me. You've got the old Pueblo general store set up out there, and I'm just kind of showing up, pulling myself up by my bootstraps. And so we go to the hills, and we set up a little mine, and we pan for gold, and we come back, and we've got all this gold, and we're back in the city, and you and I are hanging out, and let's go get a drink. And we go to the old saloon down on Market Street, or whatever was happening there. And how do you pay for your drink? I mean, you gonna hand over a bag of gold dust, or you gonna hand over a little chunk of nugget that you picked up in the hills? That seems incredibly impractical. As you might know also from your history,
but that's what people did.
That is what people did.
The term a pinch was a denomination. A pinch, a drink was a pinch. So
yeah,
yeah,
and it's wild, and that is what people did. But like all of these wonderful adventures, some entrepreneurial spirit came about. And as we all know, the San Francisco Mint didn't open up until 1854. Those legendary 1854 S coins. So prior to that, what happened between 1849 and 1854? Well, entrepreneurs happened, and they popped up shop, and they created these small businesses who literally met the demand of you and I as miners, as gold fortune seekers in old time San Francisco. They would take your gold and they'd melt it down and they'd assay it and they'd add a little copper to it to, figure out keep it stable, and they would mint their own coins. And what they did was they'd make these $5 gold coins, $10 gold coins, $20 gold coins, so that commerce in the city could happen in a way that was actually doable with this influx of gold coming in. So you have all these great companies that started out. The ones that many people may have heard of were the more successful ones. Moffat and Company is probably the most successful one. They are the most common, if you could dare say common. But there are other companies: Norris, Gregg and Norris, Was Molitor, and a whole bunch of other of these companies that started up to meet demand. Anyway, one of these companies that did this was called Schultz and Company. It was started by a guy named Judge Schultz. He was a judge, and his partner Garrett. And Garrett was the kind of operating part, and Schultz was the money and beginning, kind of inspiration, business, political side of the business. And they literally started a company to, just like all these other companies, make gold coins to support the commerce of California at the time. So that's how you have now Schultz coins. Let's kind of take a side here. Schultz coins, they didn't last very long. I think they only coined coins for a little bit in 1851, and then there was a lot of politics. All of you should go read David McCarthy and Don Kagan's book on private gold coinage and territorial gold. It tells a wonderful story about this whole thing. And you get to learn all about the coins and hear the story of what happened. Anyway, 1851, the legislature says, okay, you know what? We can't have, all these private companies making money. It's the job of the state of California or the United States of America in general to create these coins. So Schultz was a very short-lived operation. They only minted, I believe, $5 coins. They use a single die pairing of these coins, and they're very rare. There we go. That's it. Schultz and Company, San
I
Francisco.
wasn't sure if they were in the Red Book or not, because there's more that exists than what's in the Red Book, but they do have a little, paragraph. That's it. And
And as you can tell, I don't know if you could see on that, the price guide,
pretty big
not
numbers.
inexpensive coins.
I
Yeah,
mean,
there you go.
they're
VF,
starting at six figures in here for a, low grade piece. And yeah, yeah, very cool.
Okay, so how did this
1851.
coin exist? Right. So now you have these like old gold coins. There's a single die pair, so you can identify the dies. How did this coin exist? Why is this coin a Schultz coin? Now we've identified it specifically as an actual Schultz die pairing, obverse and reverse, because you're able to. There's a die break on the reverse that happened at the end state. I said earlier, not a trial. Well, we definitively discovered that this coin was struck with the actual dies of the Schultz $5 gold coin, but at the end of the die state, you can see there's a huge break over the word gold on the
So
reverse.
I'm gonna once again plug people actually go to the article and we'll put links here. Um, because you actually show the progression of the die break, which
That's
is
right.
what's fun about die breaks in general is you can actually show, and there's a lot of talk about understanding first strikes and things like that today. Well, through die progression, you can actually tell in some variation the order in which something was made, right? You can understand if it's near this end or near this end of the production.
That's right. That's right. And so we know that it was at the end of the life of the die or towards the end of the life of the die. Therefore, can't be a trial because a trial in general will be something that you try with a new die and you're kind of experimenting and kind of understanding that. Okay, so we've pretty much identified that it happens at the end of the life of the die. Here's our working theory. Our theory, and we've traced the history of this coin all the way back to the early 1900s. This coin that I'm holding here in my hand. And our theory, this is speculation, we have not found the definitive evidence, but it's a pretty good theory, is that we believe this coin was struck either by Judge Schultz or by his partner, Garrett, and given to the guy who engraved the dies, who created the dies. His name is Albert Kuhner. He worked not only for Schultz, but he produced dies for a bunch of different of the pioneer startup companies. And we speculate that this was given to Kuhner as a thank you gift for his work. And, the reason is if you look at the obverse, you can see how Liberty is just, the rays from the 8 real are just framing that
Mhm.
obverse design as if to say, this is a wonderful, gorgeous piece of work that you have done here. And we trace the coin back to his daughter. And in fact, his David McCarthy discovered that his daughter in the early 1900s brought that coin to a coin club meeting and showed it off. This coin that I'm holding in my hand here. And
Not because there are others of those, correct?
there are other Schultz $5 gold coins. There
Okay.
are no other impressions of the coin made on an 8 real. This is a unique
Oh,
coin. Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
So the auction results that show the same sample, that's a different that is that same coin? Now I'm
This exact coin that I'm holding right here. This is the
okay.
one of one.
Okay.
So this
Roger.
coin was brought to a coin club meeting in the early 1900s. It ended up in the hands of a French collector named David, and it was sold in Amsterdam in 1930. Now, Albert Kuner went to France and got married, so not inconceivable that there's a connection there between Kuner's family and the French. And then after that, once this coin was sold at auction in 1930, Fernand David's collection, it's almost like a numismatic who's who. Waldo Newcomer, a very, very well-known collector of interesting pioneer and territorial coins, owned this. It was owned by the dealer FCC Boyd. It was owned by Max Mail, who's one of the most prolific numismatists and dealers of all time. It was owned by and sold by Abe Kossoff. It's sort of a who's who of numismatics on this specific coin right here. It was most recently sold in 1982, at 82 or 83. It's in my article at a Bowers and Ruddy sale of the Clifford collection, and that was the last time it has been on the market. So from 1982, it somehow made its way into the collection of the relative of the gentleman I met at this local show, and then it made its way to Rarity7. And for the first time in its life, the coin has been certified. This is the first time it's been in a holder. We had to present all this evidence to PCGS in
Mhm.
order for them to, understand that it's an authentic coin and not this insane, weird fake. So after presenting this evidence to PCGS, it took a while to gather it. They put it in the holder and graded it AU55, and here it is, and here it sits.
That's cool. And you can buy a soda with it.
You can, I would hope that you could buy at least two sodas with it.
At least two. That one
At
from
least, perhaps.
it's the dusty trail out there, my friend.
It's-
You know. So that is a crazy story. So I'm impressed with the research because you know I couldn't really figure out what I had for lunch yesterday.
This I will give all of the credit on this research to my partner Owen Seymour, who is
Okay.
a spectacular and genius numismatist, and it's a pleasure to work with him. And he did a bulk of the heavy lifting. He was able to identify the die state on the coin and found some records of it, and really kind of dug in to do some of the proof that it was not a die trial or any
Right.
type of
Right.
altered version. So Owen gets a lot of credit for that one. I just
So
helped
so
monkey type the words.
the theory that it's a gift, like I would like the first theories that come to mind for me is simply going back to a couple guys drinking. If you're familiar with the PCGS quarter or the CAC shirt or the cricket, you're familiar with what humans do, right? Like, oh, I've got
That's
these
right.
dies. Give me that Mexican coin over there.
Sure. Yeah.
And just, I mean, not that there has to be a story with it. I mean, the story could be as simple as, here's your $5. Ha ha ha.
Hold my beer, right?
Yeah, yeah,
All
yeah.
great stories begin with hold my beer.
Right, exactly, exactly. But the
Totally
fact,
plausible that's what happened. I mean,
well,
that yeah.
either way, I mean, the fact, knowing exactly why it was made is going to be always a mystery. But knowing the fact that you can trace it back to the engraver's daughter is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, we may never actually know the very beginning of that, but man, that is as close to, talking about holding history. What a cool
Yeah.
piece. So is this
Eh,
something that you guys have intentions to auction, or is there a price tag on it, or what's the thought process there?
That is the question. We don't know the answer quite yet. I do believe that we will eventually sell the coin. I don't know whether it will be a direct sale, whether we'll go to auction, whether we'll offer it to a client. We're still kind of figuring that out.
Yeah.
The other directly relevant question is how much is it worth? And I don't know the answer to that question
Have
either.
you have you had people come to, because this has been published. I mean, it went out on, I'm trying to remember where it went out through, where I saw it first. I don't know if it was on someone's email list other than yours. It was like through either CAC or somebody had put it out as like a coin, and probably a PCGS article since it's in a PCGS holder. Anyways,
Yeah.
the question is, has anyone reached out to you yet with offers?
A lot of people have reached out. We spoke to some of the biggest names in numismatics today have expressed interest in the coin. I had a lot of conversations with folks at ANA this past week. Part of the reason we brought the coin, we had a wonderful exhibit, and I can send you a picture of that exhibit at the ANA show last week, was to kind of get out there and have conversations with folks. So we did have a lot of conversations. We actually, I've spoken to a few folks who own the real gold ones of these Schultz
Yeah,
coins, and they've said, this might be a wonderful addition to the collection. So the goal was to kind of start having conversations and get a feel for who might be interested in this, but we haven't really decided what we'll do yet.
yeah. Well, have you ever been a part of anything like this before?
Certainly not. And
Yeah.
I've said a lot, this is definitely the coolest coin that I've ever owned. Probably will be the coolest coin that I ever will own in terms of pure cool factor. I'm sure I'll own more valuable coins, and someday
There's
I'll,
expensive, there's expensive, and then there's interesting,
yeah.
and they're not always the same thing.
It's a wonderful thing. I'm sure you experience this, Ben. It's the wonderful thing about this business and hobby is it's an ever never ending quest to find something cooler and more interesting and more exciting. It's we're all numis addicts and we all want that next big hit of something fun and cool. And I know you're guilty of this too.
Oh yeah, no, I always find it's like you were talking about when you met the gentleman, you have you're going through things and they have value, and you can have something that has a lot of value and maybe something that's easy for you to sell, but it really might not mean a whole lot to you as someone who's handled a lot of coins. And then you'll find the littlest piece of paper and it has a name on it or a
Right.
logo or an
Right.
icon, and you're like, wait a second. Well, how does this, how does this connect? And that's the type of thing that's always that does make the entire hobby fun, because I think just the stories and the history is what always draws people back to collecting one way or the other, whether they're in US, world, ancients, paper. It's just always calling people back.
Yeah, I mean we are all experiencing living physical tangible history lessons every day that we play in this. And unless you're super into the modern stuff, in which case you're hoping that you're experiencing history and something that might be valuable in the future, which I think is part of the fun as well. But it is generally about you experiencing these moments in history and commemoration of who owned this or who held this or who spent this or who did what with a various coin.